Be me, 42 years old, sitting at my desk at the nonprofit where I've worked for 17 years, staring at the email from my daughter's school about parent-teacher conferences. Can't even focus on it because my hands are shaking. 3 days ago, everything I've built started collapsing, and I still can't process it. Let me back up. I've spent my entire adult life doing the work. The real work. Not the corporate feminism bullshit. Not the lean-in garbage. Actual grassroots organizing, policy advocacy, community education. Started right out of college, worked my way up through various organizations, met my ex-husband at a fundraiser. He seemed progressive enough. We had 4 kids in 6 years, which I know sounds traditional, but it was my choice. My choice. My body. My decision to have a large family. We divorced when the youngest was 3 because he couldn't handle that my career mattered as much as his. Typical story, he wanted me to scale back, be more available. I refused to. Shrink myself for anyone. Raised these 4 kids mostly on my own with some weekend custody arrangement. And I didn't just raise them, I educated them. From the time they could talk, I was conscious about everything. Toys that weren't gendered, books with strong female protagonists and emotionally intelligent male characters. No princess culture, no toxic masculinity reinforcement. When my oldest son was 5 and someone gave him a toy gun, I had a whole conversation with him about violence and patriarchy. He seemed to get it, asked thoughtful questions. I was so proud. My daughter, the second oldest, never wore pink until she was 7 and specifically requested it. Even then, I made sure she understood she didn't need to perform femininity for anyone. We talked about media representation, about the male gaze, about internalized misogyny. She nodded. She engaged. She seemed to understand. The 2 younger boys, I was even more careful with them. Made sure they knew crying was healthy, that gentleness was strength. No sports, unless they specifically wanted them, and even then, I chose carefully. Soccer was okay, football was too aggressive. I homeschooled them until middle school, specifically to control their early education. Used curricula I vetted personally, supplemented with theory adapted for children. Read them books about consent, about emotional labor, about dismantling the patriarchy, had age-appropriate conversations about everything. When they went to public school for middle and high school, I prepared them, told them they'd encounter regressive attitudes, that their peers might not understand, armed them with responses, with frameworks for thinking critically. They seemed solid, all 4 of them. My daughter started a gender equality club at her school in 8th grade. I helped her organize it, came to speak at their meetings. My oldest son wrote a paper about toxic masculinity in 9th grade that his teacher praised. I kept that paper. I was so proud I cried. The younger 2 were always sensitive, thoughtful, asked good questions. People would comment on how articulate they were, how aware. Other parents at school events would ask me how I raised such conscious kids. I'd smile and say it was about consistency, about walking the talk. My work knew me as someone who didn't just advocate professionally, but lived it personally. I'd bring my kids to events sometimes. They'd help set up. They'd listen to speakers. My daughter volunteered at our office the summer she was 14. She was good at it, organized, passionate. I thought I was doing everything right. I really believed I was giving them the tools to see through the bullshit, to opt out of restrictive gender roles, to build lives based on authentic selves rather than societal expectations. And for years, it seemed like it was working. Then my daughter turned 15, started spending more time in her room, which I figured was normal teenage stuff. But then I noticed she was watching makeup tutorials, not like creative, artistic makeup, like conventional beauty makeup, contouring, highlighting, the whole thing designed to meet patriarchal beauty standards. I tried to approach it gently, asked her about it. She shrugged, said she just thought it was fun. I suggested maybe we could talk about where those beauty standards come from. She rolled her eyes. Actual eye roll. Said, "I know, Mom. I know all of that. I just like it." I let it go. Didn't want to push, but then it was other things. She started following these influencers, who were all about traditional femininity. Not even ironically, just straight up embracing it. Started talking about wanting to learn to bake, to sew. Which, fine, those are skills, gender-neutral skills. but it was the way she talked about it, like she was reclaiming something, like she'd been deprived. My oldest son, meanwhile, started going to the gym, which, okay, physical fitness is fine, but he became obsessed with it. Bulking, cutting, protein shakes, the whole culture. Started hanging out with these guys from school who were all about sports and working out. Stopped talking to me about feelings, about anything substantive. Just grunted responses. Spent all his time either at school or the gym or in his room. When I tried to talk to him about emotional availability, about staying connected, he said he was fine, that I worried too much, brushed me off like I was being hysterical. That word, hysterical, started coming up. My daughter used it once, said I was being hysterical about something. I forget what, some small thing, but the word choice, the casual deployment of a term with such loaded gendered history, from my daughter. I corrected her, explained the etymology, the implications. She sighed and said, "It's just a word, Mom, just a word." Like words don't matter, like language doesn't shape reality. Everything I'd taught her, just dismissed. The two younger boys started asking to play football. Both of them wanted to try out for the school team. They were 13 and 14. I'd successfully kept them away from it for years. And now they wanted to participate in this violent, hierarchical, toxic environment. I tried to discuss it with them, asked why football specifically. They said their friends played. It looked fun. They wanted to try. I explained my concerns about the culture, about CTE, about aggression. They promised they'd be careful, that it wasn't that deep, not that deep. The socialization of young men into violence and dominance isn't that deep. I eventually allowed it because I didn't want to be controlling. Autonomy matters. Their choices matter, even when they're choosing things that hurt me to watch. But it got worse. My daughter, now 16, started dating. Which, fine, I've always been open about healthy relationships, but the guy she chose, this conventionally attractive, athletic, utterly unremarkable boy, polite enough when he came to the house, but I could tell. No depth, no consciousness, just coasting on privilege. When I gently asked her what she liked about him, she listed the most superficial things. He's funny, he's sweet, he's good at basketball. Nothing about shared values, about intellectual connection. I asked if they talked about important things. She looked at me like I was from another planet, said, "We're 17, Mom. We're not trying to solve world problems," as if being young means you can't think critically. As if I hadn't raised her to engage with the world thoughtfully at every age. My oldest son started talking about joining the military. The military. My son, whom I raised to question authority, to resist imperialism, wanted to enlist. When I asked him why, he gave me this speech about service and discipline and purpose. Words that sounded like they came from a recruitment video. I tried to discuss U.S. foreign policy, military-industrial complex, the reality of what he'd be serving. He said I was being political, about something personal, that it was his life, his choice, which, yes, it is his choice, but choices don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by propaganda, by societal pressure, by patriarchal notions of masculinity. He wasn't making a free choice. He was capitulating to everything I'd tried to protect him from. The breaking point came 3 days ago. All 4 of them were home, which is rare now. They're always out with friends, at practice, at work, anywhere but here. I made dinner, tried to have a family meal like we used to have these great discussions at dinner about articles I'd read, about current events. The kids would engage, offer perspectives, ask questions. Now they mostly look at their phones. But I tried. I put phones away rule for dinner. Made something I knew they all liked. Tried to start a conversation about something I'd seen about the pay gap. New statistics, still depressing. Wanted to discuss. My daughter actually groaned, audibly groaned. Said, "Can we not do this right now?" I asked what she meant. We were just talking. My oldest son said, "We're eating. Can we just have a normal dinner?" Normal. Like discussing structural inequality isn't normal. Like the conversations we've always had suddenly aren't acceptable. I said I thought we could have a civil discussion about important issues. That's when my daughter put down her fork. looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, and pity. She looked at me with pity, and she said, "Mom, I love you, but I don't agree with you about most of this stuff anymore." The room went completely silent. I felt my throat close up, asked her what she meant. She took a breath and said she'd been thinking about it for a while, that she appreciated how I raised her, the opportunities I gave her, but that she didn't see the world the way I did. Didn't think everything was about gender, about patriarchy, that she wanted different things than I wanted for her. I wanted to get married young, have kids, maybe work part-time. Wanted a traditional family structure because she thought it was beautiful, not oppressive. Said she'd watched me struggle as a single parent and didn't want that. Wanted a partner who provided while she focused on home. Each word was a knife. I couldn't even respond. Then my oldest son joined in. Said he'd been afraid to tell me, but he agreed with his sister, that he thought I'd done too much, pushed too hard. That he felt like he couldn't just be a normal guy without it being a political statement. That he was tired of analyzing everything through the lens of gender, just wanted to live his life without constant critique. The two younger boys were quiet but nodding. All four of my children, united against me, against everything I'd taught them, everything I believed. I tried to argue, tried to explain, told them they were falling for the same traps that caught previous generations, that they were too young to understand what they were giving up. My daughter shook her head, said, "You always do this," said I couldn't accept that they might genuinely disagree. Had to frame it as them being tricked, being too young to know better. Couldn't respect their autonomy. To autonomy, she used my own framework against me. I raised her to value choice, and she was choosing this, choosing everything I'd fought against. My oldest son said he felt like he'd been indoctrinated. That word, indoctrinated. Said he was grateful for some things, like being comfortable with emotions, but that overall he felt like I'd tried to program them. That going to regular school had shown him how different his upbringing was, how much pressure I'd put on them to think correctly. I was crying by this point. Couldn't help it, couldn't hold it together. Told them they were breaking my heart. My daughter softened a little, said that wasn't her intention, but that she had to be honest, that she couldn't pretend to believe things she didn't believe just to make me happy. Asked if I could respect her choices the way I'd always said I would. I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Got up from the table and went to my room. Heard them cleaning up dinner, talking quietly. Probably about me, about how I'd reacted, proving their point that I couldn't handle disagreement. That was 3 days ago. Since then I've been going through the motions. Going to work, coming home, barely speaking to them. They're polite but distant, treating me like I'm fragile. Which I am. I'm shattered. Keep thinking about every choice I made, every book I read to them, every conversation I orchestrated. Every time I corrected gendered language or challenged traditional assumptions, did I push too hard? Was my son right? Did I indoctrinate them? No, that's not right. I was teaching them, educating them, giving them tools. It's not indoctrination when it's the truth, but they don't see it as truth. They see it as my opinion, my ideology, something they were subjected to, not educated about. I keep replaying moments from their childhood. My daughter at 6, asking why she couldn't wear the princess dress her grandmother bought. Me explaining about limiting femininity to appearance, about internalized misogyny. She'd nodded solemnly, put the dress away. Did she even understand, or was she just complying? My oldest son at 8, coming home from a friend's house, talking about an action movie they'd watched, me sitting him down to discuss violence in media, masculine stereotypes. He'd seemed engaged, but maybe he was just appeasing me. Maybe all of it, every conversation, every lesson, was just them learning to tell me what I wanted to hear. And then when they got old enough, developed enough independence, they rejected all of it, not even with anger, which might be easier to take, with calm certainty. They're not rebelling, they're just disagreeing, which somehow feels worse. At work yesterday, we had a planning meeting for an upcoming campaign about reproductive rights, something I care deeply about. Usually I'm energized by this work, focused, but I couldn't concentrate, Kept thinking about my daughter, saying she wanted to have kids young. Wanted to prioritize family over career. Everything this work is supposed to give her the freedom not to do if she doesn't want, and she does want it. Genuinely wants the life I've spent decades arguing against. My colleague asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I'm not fine. Went home early, said I had a headache. Which was true. I've had a constant headache for 3 days. From crying, from tension, from the cognitive dissonance. My daughter was in the kitchen when I got home, baking cookies, wearing an apron her grandmother gave her, humming to herself. Looked happy. Happier than I've seen her look in months. She offered me a cookie, still warm. I took it. It was delicious. She's good at this, naturally good. Asked me how work was, genuine interest in her voice. I said, it was fine. Asked about her day. She told me about a sewing project she's working on, making a dress for herself. Talked about the pattern, the fabric, technical details. She's teaching herself, watching videos, practicing, developing a real skill, finding joy in it. I should be happy she's found something she's passionate about. But all I can think is that I've failed. Failed to show her there's more to life than domestic skills. Failed to spark passion for things that matter. She's arranging her life around becoming exactly what feminism fought to prove women were more than. Later that night, my oldest son came to my room, knocked, asked if we could talk. I said okay. He sat on the edge of my bed, looked uncomfortable, said he knew I was upset, wanted me to understand it wasn't personal, that he loved me, respected me, was grateful for how hard I worked to raise them, but that he needed to live his own life, to make his own choices, even if I didn't agree. I asked if he'd really thought through the military thing. He said he had been researching for months, had already talked to recruiters, was planning to enlist after graduation. I asked what happened to the boy who wrote about toxic masculinity. He was quiet for a moment, then said he still thought some of that was valid, but that he'd been performing for me, writing what he knew I wanted to read, thinking what he knew I wanted him to think, that once he got to high school and had more exposure to different perspectives, he realized he didn't actually agree with a lot of it. Felt like he'd been living in an echo chamber, my echo chamber. I wanted to argue, but what could I say? He's right that I controlled his environment, his education. Thought I was protecting him, but maybe I was just limiting him. He hugged me before he left, said he hoped I could accept his choices eventually, that he didn't want to lose our relationship over this, but that he also couldn't pretend to be someone he wasn't anymore. I've been lying awake every night since, going through everything in my head. My entire adult life has been about this work, the professional work at my job, yes, but more importantly, the personal work of raising conscious children, children who would contribute to dismantling oppressive structures, who would model different possibilities, who would carry forward the progress my generation fought for. And in one dinner conversation, that entire project collapsed. All 4 of them rejecting it, choosing traditional paths, conventional lives, reinforcing the exact structures I tried to teach them to question. The worst part is I can't even talk to anyone about it. My colleagues at work see me as someone who has it figured out, the woman who successfully balanced career and motherhood, who raised feminist children while doing feminist work. I've literally spoken on panels about parenting with purpose, written blog posts about raising conscious kids. What do I say now? That it didn't work. That they all rejected everything I taught them. That my daughter wants to be a housewife and my sons want to join the military and play football. I can already imagine the sympathy, the judgment, the quiet satisfaction from people who never agreed with my approach, the ones who thought I was too extreme, too rigid. They'll say kids need to rebel, it's natural, or that you can't force ideology, it has to be chosen, as if I forced anything. I just educated them, gave them information, but maybe that's not how they experienced it. My younger son started football 2 months ago. I went to one game, couldn't handle it, watching them in pads, crashing into other boys. The coaches yelling, the crowd cheering for violence. Everything I found disturbing about sports culture on full display. And my sons, loving it, high-fiving teammates, celebrating tackles, completely bought into this system I find abhorrent. They asked why I didn't come to more games. I said I was busy with work, but really, I can't stomach watching them embrace this. My daughter joined some kind of women's group at school, not a feminist group, a traditional women's group. They do service projects, but also learn homemaking skills, cooking, hosting, etiquette. She came home excited about a lesson on table settings. Table settings. As if there aren't more important things young women should be learning. I asked if they ever discussed structural inequality or reproductive rights. She said no, it wasn't that kind of group. It was about building skills and community. I said feminism was about community too. She said it was different. She wanted something that wasn't political. Everything is political. Every choice is political. I've said that 1,000 times, but she doesn't see it that way. She sees politics as separate from life, something you can opt out of, which is itself a position of privilege she doesn't recognize. Though I gave her that privilege, sacrificed so she'd have choices, and she's using those choices to reject choice, to embrace limitation. The irony isn't lost on me. I fought for her right to choose, and she's choosing this. Yesterday at work, we had a young woman come speak. Recent college graduate, joining our team. So enthusiastic, so committed. Reminded me of myself at that age. I felt this deep sadness watching her. She doesn't know yet how it can all fall apart. How you can do everything right and still fail. How the people you invest everything in can reject it all. After the meeting, she came up to me. Said she'd read some of my articles, was excited to work with me, asked if I had any advice. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her not to have kids, that you can't serve two masters, can't be fully committed to the work and to raising children, that children will become their own people, regardless of what you teach them. But I just smiled and said something generic about staying true to your values. She nodded enthusiastically and walked away. I wanted to cry. This morning my daughter asked if we could go shopping together. Mother-daughter time, her treat with money from her part-time job. I said okay, figured I should try. She took me to stores I never shop at, wanted to look at dresses, at feminine clothes, kept asking my opinion on things. And I really tried to be supportive. But every dress she picked up looked like a costume to me. Performance of femininity that serves patriarchal gaze. She could see my face, my reaction. Said, never mind, this was a bad idea. I said no, I was trying. She said that was the problem, that I had to try, that I couldn't just be happy for her. Everything had to be analyzed, politicized. She left me in the store, said she'd meet me at the car. I stood there, surrounded by clothes I'd never wear, feeling like I'd failed another test I didn't know I was taking. In the car, she was quiet. I apologized, said I was working on it. She said she knew this was hard for me, but that she needed me to accept this, accept her as she is, not as I want her to be. I said I did accept her. She said, no you don't. You accept a version of me that agrees with you. That the real her, the her who wants these traditional things, that her you can barely stand to be around. I started crying again, right there in the car. She softened, said she didn't mean to be cruel, but that it was the truth. We drove home in silence. I keep thinking about all the milestones I was supposed to celebrate. My daughter going to college, starting a career. My sons finding partners who challenged them, staying emotionally available. All of them building lives that reflected consciousness, choice, resistance. Instead, I'm looking at a future where my daughter marries young and has babies, where my oldest son joins the military, where my younger sons become exactly the kind of men I've spent my life critiquing. And the absolute worst part, the part that's destroying me, is that they seem happy. Genuinely happy. My daughter glows when she talks about her boyfriend. My oldest son has purpose and direction for the first time. My younger sons have confidence, camaraderie, belonging. They're thriving in these traditional roles, while I'm falling apart watching them. Last night I couldn't sleep again. Went through old photos on my phone. My daughter at 4, serious expression, holding a sign at a march. My sons at various ages, at events, at educational activities I planned. They looked happy in some photos. But in others, I can see it now, they looked tired. Tired of being props in my activism. Tired of every moment being educational. Tired of being raised as a statement rather than just as kids. One photo stopped me. My oldest son, maybe 9 years old, at a talk I gave about raising boys differently. He's sitting in the front row, and I'm on stage. He's looking up at me with this expression. I always thought it was pride, but looking at it now, it might be something else. Obligation, performance, the weight of being an example. I'd brought him to show I practiced what I preached, but did I ever ask if he wanted to be there? If he wanted to be part of my public narrative? Or did I just assume his compliance? I think I assumed a lot. I assumed they'd internalize what I taught, assumed their compliance meant agreement, assumed my certainty was enough for all of us. Today at work I had to lead a workshop about raising children with feminist values, parents in the community, eager to do what I did, looking to me as an expert, a model. I almost canceled, but I've never canceled. It would raise questions. So I went, I presented, talked about intentionality, about conscious parenting, about questioning gender norms and having age-appropriate conversations. Everyone took notes. Everyone looked inspired. Someone asked how my kids turned out. I said they were great, finding their own paths, which is technically true, but it felt like lying. After the workshop, a woman came up, said she hoped her daughter would be like mine, confident, independent, making empowered choices. I smiled and thanked her. Didn't tell her my daughter's empowered choice is traditional marriage and motherhood. Didn't tell her that all my work might produce the exact opposite of what she wants. Drove home thinking about the word failure. I've achieved everything professionally. Respect in my field, influence, a body of work I'm proud of. But my actual children, my actual work of raising humans, complete failure. Not because they're bad people, they're not. They're kind, they're thoughtful in their own ways. But they're not what I tried to make them. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I was trying to make them something rather than letting them become themselves. But how do you let children become themselves when you know the forces shaping them? When you see the patriarchy, the systems, the subtle and overt messages? How do you not intervene? How do you not try to protect them, to arm them? With analysis. I don't know. I genuinely don't know anymore. My daughter is in her room now, video chatting with her boyfriend. I can hear her laughing. My oldest son is doing push-ups in the garage. The younger two are playing video games, shooting games I never allowed when they were little. They're all fine. They're all moving through their lives without the weight I carry. And I'm sitting here consumed by regret and despair, wondering where it all went wrong, wondering if I pushed too hard or not hard enough, wondering if different tactics would have worked, or if this was always inevitable. Children separating, individuating, rejecting parents' values. But it feels like more than normal separation. Feels like complete repudiation of everything I am, everything I believe, everything I tried to build. The foundation I thought was solid turned out to be nothing. They walked away from it without looking back. I'm supposed to respect their autonomy. I'm supposed to support their choices. But how do I support choices I find regressive? How do I watch my daughter limit herself? How do I watch my sons become complicit in their own socialization? And smile and say I'm proud of them. People keep asking if I'm okay. I say I'm fine, just stressed with work. But I'm not fine. I'm being devoured by this crushing regret that I can't escape. This despair that colors everything. I can't eat, can't sleep, can't focus. My therapist says, I'm grieving the children I thought I had, grieving the future I thought we'd have, grieving my own sense of efficacy and success. But grief implies acceptance, eventually, and I can't accept this. Can't accept that my life's work amounted to nothing, that the most important project I ever undertook failed completely. My daughter graduates next year. We'll probably get engaged shortly after. Marry at 19 or 20. Start having babies right away. I'll be expected to be happy, to celebrate, to support, to be the doting mother and grandmother, but inside I'll be screaming at the waste, at the limitation, at watching her choose the exact life feminism was supposed to free her from. My oldest son leaves for basic training in 6 months, will come back transformed by military culture, indoctrinated in ways I couldn't prevent. My younger sons will probably follow similar paths. Traditional masculinity, traditional roles. Maybe they'll marry women like their sister, create traditional family structures, and I'll be the odd one out. The progressive mother surrounded by conventional adult children, trying to bite my tongue at family gatherings, trying not to critique every choice, trying not to point out the patterns they can't or won't see. This is my future, and I can't escape it, can't fix it, can't undo any of it. I'm trapped in the consequences of my own certainty, and it's destroying me from the inside out, every day, a little more, until I don't know what will be left.